This is chapter 79 of Life of Pi. There were sharks every day, mainly makos and blue sharks, but also oceanic white tips, and once a tiger shark straight from the blackest of nightmares. Dawn and dusk were their favorite times. They were never seriously troubled us. On occasion, one knocked whole the lifeboat with its tail, and I don't think it was accidental. Other marine life did too. Turtles and even Torados. I believe it was part of the shark's way of determining the nature of the lifeboat. If it was a whack of a fender's nose, if it was a hatchet's and vanishing post hastes into deep. The main nuisance of a shark was that they made being the water risky and trespassing on property, which were a sign of saying beware of dog. Otherwise, I grew quite fond of the sharks. They were like curmudgeonly old, smaller than usual, usually no more than 4 or 5 feet long. It was the most attractive, sleek, and slender of the smaller, more unusual, 4 than 5 feet long, and the most unattractive slender was small mouths and discreet gill slits in the back of the rich ultramarine of the stomach's snow-white colors that vanished the gray-black, and they were at any depth, but which close to the surface sparkled with surprisingly brilliance. With the makos, they were larger head, mouth bursting with frightening teeth, but they were too nicely colored, an indigo blue that shimmered beautifully in the sun. The oceanic white tips were often shorter than the makos, some of which stretched 12 feet, but they were much stockier and enormous dorsal fins. They sailed high above the surface in the water, the war banner rapidly moving, sight that was usually nerve-wracking to behold. Besides, they were a dull color, a short grayish brown, and the molted white tips of other fins no special attraction. A number of small sharks, blue sharks, and most part some makos too. Each time it was just after sunset, the dying light of the day, I caught them with my bare hands, and they came to close the lifeboat. The first one was the largest mako, ever 4 feet long. It had come up to gone near a bow several times as it passed by, yet again impulsively dropped my hand into the water and grabbed it just ahead of the tail, where my body was the thinnest and harsh skin afforded the marvelously good grip. Without thinking about what I was doing, I pulled, I jumped, giving my arm terrific shake. To my horror, the delight of the thing vaulted in my air explosions of the water, spray from the merest fraction. The second I didn't know what was going to do next. The thing was smaller than I was, but it wasn't for foolish. I let it go, turning the swung, falling in the tarp. I threw the mako towards the stern. The fish fell from the sky into Richard Parker's territory. It landed with a crash and started twatching in such thunder that I was afraid to demolish by boat. Richard Parker was startled. He attacked immediately. An epic battle began. The interest of the zoologist, I can report the following. Tiger was not at first attacked will not at first attack a shark without the water of its jaws, but it will rather strike with its forepaws. Richard Parker started clubbing the shark. I shuddered every blow. They were simply terrible. Just one delivered to a man would break every bone, and it would turn any piece of furniture into splinters, would reduce the entire house into a pebble of rubble, and the mako was not enjoying the treat of evident from the way that it was twisting and turning and beating its tail and reaching its mouth. Perhaps it was because Richard Parker was not familiar with the sharks, had ever encountered the predatory fish, whether the case it happens in accident, which one of those few times when I was reminded about Richard Parker was not perfect, that despite the honed instincts he could be bumble, but his left paw to the Mako's mouth. The Mako closed its jaws. Immediately, Richard Parker reared onto the back legs. The shark was jerked. It would let go. Richard Parker fell back down, opened his mouth wide and full roared, and left the blast of the air against my body. The air visibly shook in the heat coming off the road of the boat. The day I imagined somewhere of 100 miles away. The ship watched, looked startled, and reported the oldest thing that I thought ever heard, a cat's meow coming from the 3 o'clock days later. That was wringing my guts. The shark is deaf, conventionally speaking, and would think the pinching tiger's paw alone, trying to swallow one, received a volcanic roar in the face and quacked, trembled, and turned liquid into fear. Collapsed. The shark perceived only a dull vibration. Richard Parker turned and started clawing at the shark's head and at his feet, front paw, and biting it with his jaws, while the rear legs began tearing the stomach back. The shark held to his paws, an only line of defense. An attack thrashed its tail. Tiger shark twisted and tumbled about with great effort, and I managed to gain enough control of the body that released it. The lifeboat drifted away. I saw flashes of orange and deep blue in the fore and skins. Lifeboat rocked the side to side, Richard Parker snarling and simply terrifying. At last the boat stopped moving. Several minutes Richard Parker sat up, licking his left paw. The following days he spent much time tending to his forepaws. The shark's skin is covered with minute tuberculous that makes it rough and sandpaper. He had no doubt cut himself while repeatedly racking the shark. His left paw was injured, but the damage did not seem permanent. No toes or claws were missing. As for the Mako, except for the tips of the tail, the mouth area incognizably untouched, it was a half-eaten, buttered church mess. Chunks of reddish gray flesh and clumps of internal organs were strewn about. I managed to gaff some of the shark's remains, but to my disappointment, the vertebrae of the sharks do not hold fluid. At least the flesh was tasty and unfishy. The crunchies of cartilage was welcome reptide, so the soft food. Subsequently, I went for smaller sharks, pups I really like. I killed them myself. I found that stabbing them through the eye with a knife was faster, less tiresome way of killing them, and hacking the tops of their heads with a hatchet.